Thank you very much, Mufti Mevlut Dudić, for honoring us with your presence and your sharing harmful words. We now come to the leadership panel on the topic, Beyond the Ideal, Navigating the Obstacles to a Just Islamic Moral Economy, where distinguished leaders in this field will share their perspectives, bringing together both theoretical knowledge and practical experience. This important panel will be moderated by Professor Haris Zogić, Head of Finance at the University of Novi Pazar. I now invite our moderator to introduce the panelists and guide them into this important discussion.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so welcome to our leadership panel, Beyond the Ideal, Navigating the Obstacles to a Just Islamic Moral Economy. So in this session, we move from theory to practice. How do we translate values such as justice, equity, and trust into real economic systems? What institutional, financial, and cultural barriers stand in the way, and how can they be overcome? Our distinguished panelists will guide us through these critical questions, offering insights from business, academia, and development practice. So now I'm going to invite my panelists for today's session. They're coming from the UK, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and of course from our city of Novi Pazar. The first panelist I'm inviting is Professor Dr. Fawad KHALEEL from the Edinburgh Napier University. So Professor, please join us on the stage. So Professor Fawad is Associate Professor in Accounting and Finance at Edinburgh Napier University. The second panelist I'm inviting is Professor Dr. Edib SMOLO from the Izdavač University in Jeddah. Professor, please join us. The third one is Dr. Mohammad Al Saghir, Managing Director of International Waqf Fund. So, Dr. Mohammed, please join us. And the last but not least, of course, our distinguished rector, Professor Dr. Suad BE쪼IROVIĆ. So all of our panelists are leaders in their fields, and they are giving high contribution to the development of Islamic finance. And I'm very pleased that we have panelists from 3 different countries today. So when you arrived to the Belgrade airport yesterday, we already started discussions, on the topic. So I know that this panel is going to be, very intensive, right, as we promised. Okay, so the first, I will start from the first panelist, but before that I will bring up some rules. I ask all my speakers to take around 5 questions to answer, maximum 5 minutes to answer the question, because we are running off our time. So Professor KHALEEL, please, how can global education and online learning platforms help bridge the gap between Islamic moral economic ideals and real-world implementation? Should we provide mic? Yeah, please. Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think it's a really good question. My expertise are in pedagogy, and I think we do have a problem with education, not just in context of Islamic finance, but in a broader context within the Muslim world as well. And the problem, I think, arises with the fact that if you go and ask majority of the Muslims, they will know about riba, right? I think quite a lot of them will be able to recite the verses as well. Quite a lot of them will be able to give you intrinsities of how it works or how to avoid it. But where it stops is that that knowledge does not transform into capability. When you look at the Muslim world, there's no a lot of financial literacy over there. People don't know how to do budgeting. They get involved in informal debt because Islamic finance is quite expensive, and they get into this vicious cycle, and they never recover. At micro level, there's lack of growth, there's lack of using financial intensive investments, there's lack of even managing your life properly from financial point of view. And I think that comes down to the education, because they do have knowledge, but they don't have capacity. And I think we need to transform from this idea, which I think Professor Habib touched upon earlier as well, of this mindset of competencies, where we are looking at what we need to do, what laws we need to follow. We don't have mindsets to what we need to do in terms of being creative, improving our lives at a very micro level, specifically for the people who are suffering. And when you look at the stats of the Muslim world, you do see that there's a lot of poverty over there. And poverty is a complex matter. And financial literacy plays a big role over there. And I think when it comes to online education, I think we need education that people can use in their daily life, that people can use to improve their daily life. And I think that's where financial literacy comes in. I think most important thing we can teach everyone around the world, specifically in the Muslim context, is budgeting, because they don't normally use formal financing. They rely on informal financing. They are detached from the financial world because of religious reasons and because the Islamic finance is so expensive. It's not designed for those people. So they continue to live in poverty, and they are majority of us. While minority of us do benefit from Islamic finance, it has made quite a lot of people quite rich, but not majority of us. And that's where I think the education comes in. We need to design education which reaches across boundaries, goes to these people who are living in marginalized communities around the world, and gives them those skill set, makes them entrepreneurial, makes them creative, and gives them the essential skill set that they can live their life and have financial independence. And with financial independence is the first step towards growth. And if you have financial independence, you get capacity building within the economy, households start saving up in a formal setting, that leads to a stable economy within the country. So I think we need to start at grassroots level, and I think education needs to play a big role over there. And only way to reach them is most of the time through online.
Okay, so thank you for not being online today. You came from far away, I mean from Edinburgh, from Scotland. And now we're going to Saudi Arabia, right? And the hardest question is how to comment theory and practice when it comes to Islamic finance, because I also have the background theoretical, both theoretical and practical, so there is a sometimes huge gap. So Professor Smolo, how do you see the gap between the theoretical ideals of Islamic moral economy and the realities faced in Muslim societies today?
First of all, thank you very much for having me today here, and I would like to congratulate for the organizing this conference on a very important topic. When it comes to the theory and practice, I think that is something that we can go much beyond, right? In the Muslim world generally, when we look at, like, we have a lot of Muslims who are by names. I mean, be from the local regions we know, like, you know, in Bosnia, around here, we have a lot of Muslims who declare themselves as Muslim, but they are not in practicing Muslims. So this is something that we also have in Islamic finance, right? Theoretically, we have established many not many systems, but many ideas how to go about when it comes to the economy, when it comes to the financing, organizing the businesses in Islamic ways. But what lacks is basic implementation. So we fail on this side. And this could be due to many reasons, right? And I will basically leverage on what was mentioned before, right? I think the main reason for all these faults, and I've been talking about this one recently, is our lack of knowledge, right? And then the more I'm investigating this one, the more I'm looking at these points, right? I realize that, you know, what is the wisdom of first verse that was basically Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. It wasn't about pray, it wasn't about obey, it wasn't about, like, you know, any ibadah, but it was rather learn, educate yourself. I think this is the core element, and unless we address this one, I mean, whole the idea about implementation, because the problem that I'm facing, to be honest with you, talking about Islamic finance in generally, are the Muslims. I don't have a problem of explaining Islamic finance to non-Muslims, trust me. The best example is Malaysia. Dr. Habib already mentioned this is the perfect place. They have whole system, And the majority of the clients, customers in Islamic bankings are the non-Muslims, because they realize the value, they realize potential, and of course that for them is alternative. But the problem with the Muslims is we are just guided with the, at the bottom, okay, how much do I have to pay? They don't care about underlying principles. They don't care about the consequences religiously, right? So they are ignoring this one. This could be subject to the growing mentality, including our region here that were under the communist rule, some other parts that were under the colonial rule. So we are subject, and we are actually dominated by the conventional financial system. And unless, I remember when I was in Malaysia 20 years ago and more, when the Islamic finance was just like 10%, 15%. At that time I was talking with some of my friends, some of the leading people in Islamic finance, right? We realized that Islamic finance cannot actually do much because they are what we call in economics price takers. I.e., you are coming to the market that is dominated by conventional finance, and you have to play the role according to the rules that are established by the conventional finance. Now what we see in Malaysia is actually that the Islamic finance is taking over. So this is what we are planning, like Mufti already mentioned, like this was the dream to have university, this was the dream to talk about Islamic finance. Now we are talking. Islamic finance in Malaysia was, people in Malaysia were thinking about having Islamic finance, but they were really doing they didn't just dream, they stepped in, they were believing and doing the good things, right? So they were taking actions. So they established institutions, they provided the legal and regulatory framework. Now they have a dominance of the market to some extent. Now, this is what I'm expecting from Malaysia, to be honest with you, at some point of time. Soon, Islamic finance will be the one to set up the rules. And this is where we can come and implement it more. Right now, it's very difficult to expect in, even Muslim countries, not to mention non-Muslim countries, where the Islamic banking or Islamic insurance or Islamic capital market is only sharing portion of the market. We cannot expect them to dominate. So the rules are set, we need to take them and we need to play by them. And only then we can apply more. So what we need at the moment in most Muslim countries, I believe, is the education. I've been living in Saudi Arabia, and I would be surprised when I joined 3 years ago. We had a program, we still have a program, which initially started as a master program in Islamic finance. And I had students, and we had the general finance track, we had Islamic finance track, and there was another one, I cannot recall it right now, it doesn't matter. Anyway, when I was talking, because I was in Islamic finance, when I was talking to the students, out of 8 that I had at that time, none of them were interested in Islamic finance. We were living in Saudi Arabia. I was surprised, bro. None of them were interested in Islamic finance. Like, what's the point of Islamic finance? And I had to spend like whole semester explaining to them, yes, there is the value. This is something that we are applying. Now, I'm saying this one because if this is the situation in Saudi Arabia, what do you expect in some other countries, right? Because we are always looking at Saudi Arabia as some kind of representative Islam, like cradle of the Islam and everything, right? So these are that should be up front, but they are not. So obviously there is a lack. We are polluted. Our minds are polluted, right? We need to start cleansing our mind in order to read it. And that's only by the way of educating ourselves, promoting this kind of discussion, having public talks, introducing the ideas, because people are, unaware of what is it that we are implementing. Then once we have this one, then we can expect maybe to go to the next stage of more implementing. So this is the stage, but we shouldn't be all, pessimistic, right? These steps are the steps that we are, how much we are going to reach, how much we are going to succeed. At the end of the day, it's rest in Allah's hand.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor, for bringing up the importance of education. So this is what we are doing today, actually, because we brought students, we brought professors, and also we brought businessmen. And I think that the education is the key. So when we talk about Islamic finance, we first talk about establishment of Islamic banks and so on. But I think this is the final stage. The first stage is to organize such events to highlight the importance of education. Professor Dr. Mohammad Al Saghir, So WACF has historically played a key role in promoting social justice. So what obstacles do modern WACF institutions face in reviving this role today? So you can bring up some examples maybe from your institution or obstacles that you face in the UK.
Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And I'm honored to be back again on the stage here for this second year of conference and boot camp. In terms of WACF, just to build up on what the earlier speakers have mentioned, is that there is a gap, obviously, in every dimension. It's not only on education, but as well on the business frameworks that can really harness the Islamic ethics. Because currently, if you want to do any business now, you go out on the market, and even from legal perspective, you want to establish a company, a limited company maybe. This limited company has, it's a different creature. It doesn't have the same, spirit as, it doesn't represent the Muslim spirit, the Muslim ethics. So WACF for centuries, in fact for 13 centuries, for the majority of the Muslim history, WACF was the main driver of economic activity in the market. There were no banks. Currently now we are talking about Islamic banks, but Islamic banks is pretty much just trying to Islamize the post-colonial creations. So we are trying to say, okay, guess what, we're not going to question the ontological foundation of bank. We are just going to use the bank, Islamize it, bring Islamic solutions to it, and then we can broaden the horizon for the consumers, for clients to choose from different products. However, what we can see is that Islam is not only about the economic activity. The beauty of Islam is that it really transcends between all dimensions of our lives. The beautiful ontological verse that says, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. So all of me, while I'm, all my life, or even when I sleep, is fi sabilillah, is like, it's a waqf. I'm trying to bring added value to the Muslim community, to the Muslim economy, by my presence. But currently, unfortunately, we are really captivated by education system that really prepare people to be consumers, not even producers. Even, they might be able to have some cash flow, but at the end of the day, it's cash flow to serve the end purpose of consumerism. From Islamic perspective, everything was really based on production. You minimalize consumerism and you maximize production. Production doesn't necessarily mean materialistic production. Even, a mother is a producer. When she, works at home, even the household was a production place. It wasn't a place for consumption. Now, unfortunately, Muslim households are becoming places for consumption. And that's why we started having issues of, we don't know what to feed our children, feed in terms of programs. Currently now, social media has overtaken even the household. So our children are inspired by people far away from us. So in terms of waqf is pretty much the best, the best representation of what could be the framework that can bring education, awareness, legal meaning, as well as economic activity too, and Islamic ethos as well. So we believe that waqf is going to be the future, inshallah, and it's not only taking over the banking industry, but it will be the mainstream way of doing business.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mohammed. Now we move to our next panel speaker, Rector Professor Dr. BE쪼IROVIĆ. So when we talk about the inflation, so what are the major causes and what dilemmas do economic agents face during an inflation?
Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum again. Because one of the topics of our conference is about inflation, and I think you don't need to be an economist to know what's inflation, because everybody is in this way, like in a soccer game, everybody knows the rules, and so when we talk about inflation, everybody knows it. Oh, no. And So the dilemma starts about inflation. Often we talk about inflation like weather, like the bad weather we have. For example, if we have only a little bit rain, then it's okay. If it's mass falling, then it's a problem. Then it's a hyperinflation, hyper-raining. So we make such decisions, and often when we look at what I tried to say at the beginning of my speech, of the opening speech, when we look at economics, at least when I was studying, it's often looked as a cause and effect side. We often say, okay, pull the prices down, and you will have bigger sales. So if you have bigger prices, you have lower sales. So we say cause and effect. Okay, if this would be true, it's partially true, of course. The law of supply and demand, some major brands will never sell their products. It would be so easy. So what I would like to say is, when we also look at inflation, we all know that it's a problem, but what is the essential problem? The essential problem is not that we have to put more digits on the banknotes, because we have, for example, the generation of our parents and grandparents experienced one hyperinflation from Yugoslavia in 1993, and those who lived there, as the result of the Balkan Wars, they experienced a change of prices twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. You started eating something in the restaurant, one price, then the next to another price. So what's the problem with inflation? And that's important, because we know, of course, the majority of us are economists and know that that prices do not adapt simultaneously, because someone can adapt their prices, the others cannot, because they are bound to the prices due to contractual obligations and so on. So what's the problem? The problem with inflation, I think it's all sometimes interesting to go back to our traditional scholars sometimes. As Dr. Ahmed said, we should sometimes look at our civilization, because many economic problems were treated by scholars at their point in time and mentioned. For example, with regard to inflation, famous scholar Al-Makrizi mentioned inflation and divided inflation into 2 types, which is very interesting. The one is caused by natural causes, natural catastrophes, such earthquake, pandemics and so on, things we cannot change, given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's the way it is. But the other point of view is man-made inflation. And this is what we need, what also Professor Habib said, that many types of inflation are man-made, and due to this distinction we bring into ethics. Why is this man-made inflation? Who will benefit from it? Because he distinguished, for example, one of the causes of inflation are bad governance, because the government benefited from it. At that point of time, especially agricultural economy, he was, to mention, 14th century scholar. And they monopolized the land and raised the taxes. And as a cause, inflation was happening. Who benefited from it? The other is corruption. For example, today we often talk about high prices, high food prices. But when we look who controls the food market, who imports them, what is the structure? What's the cause? Who will benefit from it? Third, one of the major causes, as we all know, is at that point in time was currency debasement, because the then government of Egypt, because it was a metallistic currency system, not printed but minted many foolish copper mints instead of gold and silver, and flooded the market. And who was benefited from it? And so when we look, of course, one of the major causes as we have today is inflation. We have inflation today as a cause of a pandemic. Of course, we couldn't change it. We had to keep the economy going, people had to live, and we had quantitative easing, we had printing money, and so many additional money flooded the market. But over the long haul is who will benefit, who benefited from it. Only in 2 sentences, the point I was writing when I was writing the article for the conference, I called it a more human-centered approach to inflation. This is only a short introduction, but a human sentence in the meaning, we as simple economic agents, we cannot change the weather, we cannot change inflation. But what are the dilemmas? When I am an entrepreneur, I can, for example, increase my prices if I'm in the market position. And I can, if the wages and salaries of our employees are contractually limited, I do not have to raise their wages, I will have an additional profit. So the dilemma for me is, from an ethical perspective, do I have, during inflation, raise also the wages of my employees, or say, okay, keep it going. I will not raise it, I will have an additional profit. The second is, for example, especially for items of mass usage, for example, food, will I use the fact that my products are needed? Will I manipulate the prices or not? And lastly, very short, and here is it, in my opinion, very interesting to analyze also the effect of interest and rebate during inflation. We all know when we calculate inflation, we have a base price, for example, the wage, the material cost, and we add the inflation or anticipated inflation rate to it, 5% more, 10% more. But what about the interest rate? We have a 5% interest rate. Okay. When we anticipate a 5% inflation rate, we add this 5% and receive 10%. Okay, people say, okay, 5-10%, what's the question? But we all know we multiplied the interest rate with the principal. And instead paying, for example, we had a loan of 1 million euros, 50,000 euros, we now pay 10%, 100,000 euros. It's a doubling. And it's not a 5% increase in the mind, because mathematically incorrect, but it's a doubling of the costs. And that is the interesting, I don't know whether Dr. Ahmed can possibly share the thoughts with the experience from Turkey, because the limit of the interest rate, and which was contrary to say orthodox thinking, because if we increase the interest rate directly according to inflation, you will destroy the economy, of course. And if you try to limit it, you try to amortize it. And this is, I think, an important question when we have to change the view we have according to economics. The majority of us, including myself, we are trained according to the classical capitalist economics. But I think, from a strategy of learning economics, Islamic economics, we should also return to this classical economic thinking, like Al Maturidi, who said, this is man-made, look who will benefit. And there are some exceptional causes, but these exceptional causes, like natural catastrophes, pandemics, they do not occur regularly. They will occur, but we have to look who will benefit from the system.
Thank you very much, Director. I'm in a very strange position because I cannot limit his time because I'll lose my job.
You will see tomorrow.
Okay, so last night we had actually a discussion regarding the inflation, especially in the Republic of Turkey, and we just discussed that it is not just made by the demand, supply, invisible hands of Adam Smith and so on. It is just used as a weapon from strong economies actually to try to influence other countries in order to use it as a weapon, not just in order to limit the potentials of other countries. So maybe in the Q&A session we can discuss this as well with Dr. Ahmed as well. So Professor Fawad, please can you answer the question? So what lessons can Muslim societies take from international experiences in addressing inequality without compromising on Islamic moral values?
I think, like, whenever you go to any conference on Islamic finance, you'll see, like, and thing, I think you hear over here echo as well, that everyone acknowledges there is an issue, there's a problem. Some call it failures of Islamic finance, others call it gap between theory and practice, then some call it lack of Islamic moral economy within the financial structure. I think there is an acknowledgement that there is an issue. I think the problem is that we don't understand the issue. And one of the reasons we don't understand the issue is because we have never really engaged with normal everyday people. So what we do is we go behind the closed doors, we put 10 to 12 people from different expertise and we say create an instrument, and then we go to the normal everyday people and we say this is what you need, this will help. And they never even had a single say in the development of it. We don't even understand what they need. So if we take example of, let's say, a Muslim farmer living on the shore of Lombok, which gets flooded after every 4 years, needs probably an insurance. Something he can protect himself, or she can protect himself from those floods, those financial constraints as well, or obligations which come after every 4 years. But we never go and ask them what they need. We go in our ivory towers, we create solutions, and then we present it to them. And I think that is the problem. We can't really go towards creating an equitable society or a world for Muslims because we don't understand what their problems are. And most of the time when you see these people, they are so detached from all these conversations that they never have a dialogue in it, they never have a representative in it. So that creates that, so to say, gap or an issue where we are coming up with good ideas and then we are asking ourselves over and over again, that was a good idea, why it didn't work? Why good ideas don't work? And Islamic finance books are full of good ideas, but they don't work because they are not made for the real world where people live their everyday lives in, day in and day out, up and down the country, the challenges they face, which can be solved financially. The financial instrument they actually need, which works for them in their circumstances. We don't create that because we don't know that, because our lives are not like their lives. We live slightly privileged life, we never face those kind of hardships. And then we go in our rooms and package something, a toolkit of financial instruments, and ship it around the world, telling every single Muslim society, this is what you need. And we can't create an equitable world. If we need to create equity and equality, we need to co-construct solutions with everyday people who will be using them. We need to bring them into the conversation. Without this co-construction, we can't really achieve anything because there will always be a gap between people who are designing the solutions and people who actually need them, because they never speak to each other. It's a bit like this. I'll just give you one example. And I'm pretty sure it must have happened to you. You go buy a bread, sometimes it doesn't fit in the toaster, sometimes it's too thick. And you think like, maybe people who make the bread does not speak to the people who make the toasters. Because either your toaster come out to be too big, where you put the bread, or your bread is too thick. So they're never really kind of like, they're never a full batch. Same is happening with Islamic finance. People are not speaking with each other. People who need the solution and people who are in a privileged position to create the solution and people who can finance it. So I think first step towards equality is to treat them equally as partners in creating those products and those solutions. Co-create a knowledge and co-create a mutual understanding with them. Bring them part of the solution rather than somebody who needs to be told what the solution is they need for their life.
Okay, thank you very much. Professor Smolo, so can you tell us what academic or intellectual contributions are still missing in order to move from theory to implementation of Islamic economic models? Again, very hard question for you.
Well, I don't think there is any kind of, I wouldn't say that there is something that we really need to do. To be honest with you, given the works of our professor here, Habib Ahmed, that I leveraged a lot when I was studying Islamic finance, and pioneers like him, we already have in place many theoretical, many models who have been tested, been analyzed, and statistically and econometrically, to be implemented. What we need is basically the action. This is something that we need to take on, next step. So I wouldn't say that we really need to come up with the new models, sort of, right? They're already there. We just need to take them and institutionalize them. What we have a problem is basically lack of implementation. And I'll tell you one example. which I remember when I was working in this ISRA Institute in Malaysia. Our research fellow was Rafa Hanif. Some of the Islamic finance will know this guy very well. He was CEO of HSBC and local banks, big banks in Islamic finance in Malaysia. And whenever we talk about this, okay, what about Islamic finance? You know, we have Mudaraba, Musharak, but actually the banks are not doing Musharak and Mudaraba. And whenever he used to be in position that I'm right now, he would say, okay, who wants to finance his project through the Mudaraba Musharak? And then, you know, no one is raising hand. No businessman is willing to enter into Musharak and Mudaraba. Why? Because we have this one from economics, basic economics, adverse selection, you know, this lack of proper information. So if you are a businessman and you already have a good model, you work it out very well, you you establish already workaround, you know, to put in place your business, and you can estimate, okay, I'm about to get 20%, then why would you share it with the bank, right? On the other side, those who are like very risky, right, they are not expecting really getting profit at the end of the day. They would be very interested to get the Mudaraba Musharaka financing. So basically he was standing on the stage and asking, okay, who wants to implement? So the thing is that our mentality, I want to share, I want to transfer the risk. As a Muslim, I'm okay, I will give it the risk to you, but I'm not going to give you the profit. So we as a Muslim, sometimes I'm not ready to implement this one. So there is no issue, we have models. But currently, as long as we have dominance of the debt-based instrument, it's very difficult to establish like Mudaraba and partnership. We can talk about that one, this is the ideal, this is the justice, this is moral values, ethical values, blah, blah, and so on, right? We can't implement it. The only way to implement it is then if we have some kind of institutions that will somehow institutionalize this one, right? For example, right now the bank cannot even enter into proper Mudaraba and Musharaka because of the legal structure. So what we need central bank to come and say, okay, we will put different sort of value or different kind of institutions that will be able to do this one. This is where I like the idea of Lawrence Kotlikov, right? The idea of limited purpose banking. I don't know if any one of you had a chance to read his book. He wrote this book after the global financial crisis. And the main idea of this book, and I wrote a couple of papers, actually chapters, that are linking this one to Islamic banks. I'll try to be very short on this one. So the limited purpose banking, he said, because banks were basically taking the money and betting with our money, and that's why we had the global financial crisis. So he said, instead of having banks, let's convert all the banks into mutual funds. So the bank will be there like one institution, but under the roof you will have cash mutual funds, which means if I want to have a cash that will be at my disposal, I will keep some of my cash in that account. I want to invest in real estate, there will be mutual fund for real estate. And then that would be, because mutual funds are risk taking, you know, institutions, there is nothing wrong with that one. So at the end of the day, he's saying that, you know, this is when I'm putting in real estate. If real estate fails, actually I'm failing. So I'm risking my money. It's not the financial institution, because we give the money to banks. What happened during 2008, 2009, Prof. Ahmed was also writing a lot about the global financial crisis. You know, they took the money, they invested in all these CDOs, CDS, collateralized debt obligations, and debt swaps and so on, credit default swaps. But we didn't ask them. We were hoping that the money is there, but they pack it up, they sold it to someone, and we created this, what Dr. Prof. Abbas Mirahod said, inverted pyramid, right? We had like 60-something trillion of values in markets, but the real economy was only like a couple of trillions. So obviously it was not sustainable. So this idea of limited purpose banking is really something that I was also writing and proposing. This is in line with the Islamic finance. So if someone said that we are trying to basically, you know, Islamized, like ontological, right? The banks that are not supposed. To be honest with you, sometimes I'm asking you, is there such thing as an Islamic bank? Let's be thinking about, right? Originally, there was no Islamic bank originally. We had the mutual or two-ways contracts. Now we try to make it tripartite, right? Or what we call this two-tier mudaraba, right? The model that was Najatullah Siddiqui suggesting and similar, right? So we are trying to institutionalize something that wasn't originally there. But if we reinvent, but that is very difficult, right? So now we need institutions that will come. So hopefully at some point of time, which doesn't mean that we are not on the right way. We need to deal with something, we need to provide solutions. But at some point of time, we might be like, you know, making complete shift from what we have done currently. So coming back to the question, I don't think that we need to come up with the new models. What we need is to give a chance to the models that we might have historically, new ways implementing, and try. Test it somewhere. So we need the volunteer, we need the political will, we need institutional support. Academicians, to be honest with you, we can now sit down and work out the model. Let's work it out, what do we need, and come up with some kind of blueprints. But unless someone takes that blueprints and tries to implement it, it will just be like, you know, some academic work that, you know, has no life in the real world. Thank you.
Yes. Again, strange position, because I cannot limit him as well. Because I'm defending my PhD thesis tomorrow in front of him. Okay, thank you very much. I like your point that we are not ready to transfer the possibility to lose. For example, most of times we criticize Islamic banks that they are not implementing musharaka or mudaraba, that they are implementing debt-based models. But from another side, what we discussed last night with Professor Dr. Ahmed, is that we as depositors are not ready to go to the Islamic bank, and if the bank tells us, okay, you can deposit your assets, but there is possibility that you're going to lose, you know. We're not ready. But we are criticizing Islamic banks when it comes to asset disbursement, distribution, or giving loans and financing corporate, retail, whatever. So we are not ready to accept the risk. This is the point that
This is exactly why I mentioned this example of Rafa Hani, because he was sitting in Malaysia, which is very much advanced, and he was asking, okay, I'm the bank, I'm gonna take a risk for myself. No one from the industry. So we are, like you said, we are criticizing the banks, but even if there is a bank that is accepting that is going to do that, as long as you have alternative, if you have good business, why would you pay 10% or 50% of your profit when you can go with the simple debt-based instrument of 5%?
Okay, thank you. Dr. Mohammed, I can limit you.
Okay, we can move on.
I can trust so. He was organized. Yes, and he is my good friend.
Next year you will know.
No. He is the host here. He is not the guest. Okay, so Waqf is a very important topic for us in Sandžak. This university is Waqf as well. So Waqf is a model how actually Islam survived in these regions, in these areas. So when it comes to the international stage, can you tell us, so how can international Waqf initiatives be structured to address global challenges like poverty, inequality, and access to education?
We can look at Waqf as a multinational corporations. Multinational corporations are legal entities that they are cross-boundary. They work on multiple different legal environments. So in terms of international Waqf, while from Waqf philosophical grounds, we prefer a decentralized notion. Even if you establish an international Waqf model, you still are trying to cater for local communities, and even whatever value is generated with a certain geography, you keep the value in that geography. There is no need to really transfer value from one geography into another. So because this is the main problem of capitalism, it just concentrated the wealth in the hands of very few, using the banks as a catalyst. Banks are tools and vehicles that has managed to extract value from local communities and concentrate it in a very specific metropolis. So that's why 100 years ago there were very few cities that were above 1 million. Now we have so many. We have so many above 1 million. And that is because of the concentration of wealth in these regions. You go into remote areas, you will find empty houses. Why? Because simply banks or the banking philosophy and methodology managed to extract value from their region and concentrated in a very confined regions. The problem of metropolis, it's not an environmental or infrastructure, or not infrastructure or engineering, because you can stack people on top of each other in like big high-rise buildings, 20-story, 30-story, or even more. But we know that there is like a lot of problems with that. But coming back to your question, in terms of what we could do, Waqf is very diverse, very dynamic. It can really tackle the question. That's very, not consumer, I wouldn't use the word consumer, but solution-oriented. So you go and engage. There is no one size fits all. I cannot say that there is like one model of Waqf that it has to be spread. You have to go with customers and try to really establish Waqf models that really work for them, listen to them, see what's the budgeting that they need. You know, when I first came to the Balkan region, I was surprised by the amount of opportunities that you can have. But we have a problem here with the population. We don't have a lot of people to really extract the value from surrounding resources. So, and I believe it's not only because of the war situation, because of the history, because of the all of the geopolitical dynamics, but even we have to educate ourselves. This is pretty much similar to Palestine. It's a what do you call it? It's a thagar. Thagar means like a place that you cannot just give up and go and live and find a better life somewhere else. Waqf is a very good tool that can really make sense of the local needs and you know, enhance the local productivity to the extent that people want to stay. They don't want to leave from there. So I believe that building and you know, we can be as an international Waqf service provider, we can help local communities thrive, but our main achievement is not how much we generate revenue from these encounters, but pretty much how much we can generate meaning for the local population. This is how we become rich.
Yes, this is very important. So based on your experience, are there any innovative models that you prefer, that you like, that you propose to us, for example?
Well, tomorrow we will have our boot camp. We have a long 2 days to really inculcate. As I said, I don't have a one-size-fits-all solution. We have to really establish what is needed, what are the problems that need solutions, and then help local experts, local businesses to develop the tools needed for them. And now it's available with a fraction of the price. Now with the AI, with all of the technology, we can develop solutions, you know, in mass. So, but to answer your question, there is no one size fits all, I would say.
Thank you very much, dear Rector. Okay, so can you give us the answer regarding the following question? So what is the major stabilization force in an Islamic moral economy?
I will be short.
You have 2 hours at disposal. These guys are patient.
The question, in fact, what I said earlier, I think we have to be honest to ourselves. When we look at the mirror, whether we are honest to ourselves. How do we behave under special circumstances? When we had the pandemic starting, here for example in Novi Pazar, there was a rush to buy flour because someone said there will be problems in the supply chain, and because we like to imitate each other, everybody was rushing to buy flour, not knowing that Serbia is one of the major exporters of wheat. If we have something, we have wheat. So the problem is when we also look at the religious text of the Hadith literature, the first Hadith are always starting about the niyat, the intention. What is our intention? Do we want to manipulate, to to monopolize something under certain circumstances. We are sitting now here, it's beautiful, everything is beautiful and so on, but when we go to the race in the practice, are we honest to ourselves? And I think when we talk about inflation, how will we behave under certain circumstances? If we have the possibility to make fast money, for example, speculating with cryptocurrencies, will we accept it or not? If we have the possibility not to increase wages, to hire lower wages, is it morally okay that we are talking I fully agree with that, about ethics, about akhlaq, moral. How morally are we in practice? And this is the taqwa. We have to be the continuous awareness that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala watches us, and we will be held accountable for each our deed. You can install 100 CCTV cameras in a room, but those who want to go the other way around will always find a way. They are always 2 steps ahead, and that is the question of our moral compass. And for example, we've got riba, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbidden it. When you look at inflation, when you only look at the supply chain of a product, every company in the supply chain who takes an interest loan will, in the case of inflation, increase the interest rate, and we will multiply double the prices. So interest is the major cause of inflation. Not only the change of the central bank rate. The majority of banks is not dependent on the central bank to have money. They have got enough money. But one change has enormous consequences on the whole economy, because money is the standard medium of exchange. So everybody uses it. We can change the prices of, for example, energy prices. Of course, almost every economic agent is using it, but somewhat more or less. But money everybody uses. And so we have to look also this perspective. To put it shortly in the words of, I like to read the book called Natural Economic Order, Silvio Gesell. He was a German-Argentine entrepreneur, in fact. And when he looked at his prices, he saw that the prices of his goods changed rather due to the interest rate and not of the quality of his goods. And he has an interesting thought, explaining the causes of interest, because he was anti-interest, not due to religion or anything, due to economic reasons. He said the fundamental, I will rephrase it, the fundamental thing about exchange is we know we possess something the other side wants. Even if I do not need it. For example, I inherited this furniture, I don't need it, but I know there's a value. I will use my position to get the maximum price. And when we sometimes talk about riba, when I read some works, they say, okay, when there's a poor debtor, okay, they don't have enough income, sufficient income, okay, interest is increasing the price and so on. But if Apple, IBM, Tesla and so takes a loan or gives bonds of about $5 billion, they are big companies, they should pay interest. But everybody has to pay interest because even though a small saver has this money which everybody needs and which he can hoard and take out of the market and ask for a price and manipulate with the price. And so everybody, to get back to the thing of imitation in the economy, even if we've got many small savers, every bank knows we have to convince the holders of money how to get the money. And if you do not convince it, they will hoard in a sense, keep it at home, keep it in another country, and we are dependent on it. And so the question arises always how we will behave under such circumstances. How, for example, and to finish with this sentence, for example, the hadith where Rasulullah says it is forbidden for to say, man from the city to intercept the caravan and to buy the goods in advance. Okay, this is what we call in modern economics asymmetric information. The man from the city knows the price, the man from the caravan, former times but not long ago, doesn't know the price in the city. Okay, do we under inflationary conditions, when we as educated economists, managers, entrepreneurs know the inflation rate, know the effects, will we say, dear customer, inflation? Okay, I will try to limit the price. Oh, okay, dear customer, that's the price. I have my children to feed. Will I use my market position? Will I manipulate with the information I have, or will I share the information and especially the knowledge I have?
Okay, thank you very much, Director. This is a very important point that actually the interest is the main cause of inflation. We are profit maximization driven, and I remember the words of Rahimahullah, Professor Dr. Edib Fetić. He passed away, I think, 4 years ago. He was one of the pioneers of Islamic finance in Bosnia and Herzegovina, together with Professor Fikret Hadžić, with Professor Edib SMOLO and others. And he said that if we follow Kant's categorical imperative, for example, and imagine that the whole financial system from the beginning was Islamic, we would be on the level of 70s or 80s asset-wise, but the development would be much stable. You know, we would not have such fluctuations, we would not have 1929 or 2008 or other crises. So I would like to inject some dynamics here, and since we have around 10 or 15 minutes, we can open the Q&A session. So anybody wanting to ask the question or to comment some of the thoughts given here, please join us. Okay, Professor Dobržić.
Thank you. I will ask my friend, my colleague, and the rector of University of Novi Pazar, because he spoke about very interesting topic. It is inflation. We are still in global inflation, and I think that he knows that very good. But maybe he don't mention it, and what he thinks about crashing of Bretton Woods system, which happened 50 years ago. I think that that event the most crucial for the inflation now. Of course, not at this moment, because as you know, they have possibility to stamp money without control. So everything what we lives now, I think that most things which actually have the big impact on inflation today is crashing, and everything what's happened after that, you know, that oil shocks, and actually we live in the era of petrodollar. So give us some thinking about that, and are you agree with it or don't agree? Disagree. Thank you.
It's a big question, so we need not days but years, and I think at the end we will not agree. To keep it shortly, often when we talk about inflation, we compare the gold price, and we look at the gold price that hits record levels. We know more than 100,000. Gold is, I think, in almost every Muslim society is very, very interesting and as an investment. But I think what's the problem? Only to return about money. When we teach our students about money, we say there are two essential functions: standard medium of exchange and as a store of value. But nobody teaches these are two contradictory functions. It cannot be simultaneously a medium of exchange and a store of value. Either it's one or another. And when you talk about gold, when you have the money, you use it, it's fulfilling its function. Imam Ghazali in his Ihya al-Ulumuddin explains it perfectly. And if we keep it at home, nobody can use it. It's that money from the point of view of economics. It's no medium of exchange anymore. So the Bretton Woods system, and on to start, and I think when we now look at gold, for example, at the gold price, we look at it as an investment, not as a medium of exchange. If we would return it as a medium of exchange, today's economies would not work. There would be many problems because even during materialistic times, for example, Islamic countries introduce fuller's copper money in order to have enough money for exchange. Or you will return to other substitute in nowadays digital money and so on in order to finance the economy, to have a medium exchange. Because people, when they have gold, they can store it at home, not for years, but for thousands of years. Here, for example, during Roman times, because this part of the world was part of the Roman Empire, when they find the gold 2000 years old, it's still valuable today. So you can dig it and go away, keep it for generations, and you will have. But from the economic point of view, it is that money you cannot use it for exchange. And the Bretton Woods system, I think the metallistic or gold-based system is not a solution to today's problem. To keep. And the other answer is the Bretton Woods system is a specific system which was designed, as we know, in 1944, especially for the US to dominate the markets, for US dollar supremacy, and not for the good of the world. Because there were fixed rates. For example, in Germany, it was the rate was $1 for German marks, and the real rate was $1 2 marks. So they had cheap imports. Yes, they bought Mercedes and so on, but it was only benefiting one country, which now tries to reduce its import deficit from these times because they import much more than they export. So I think with regard to inflation, there is no ideal answer. The major problem is still man-made, and it's the problem whether those who can make decisions whether they are just or not, whether they are oriented to the general benefit or not.
Okay, thank you very much. I saw Professor Sara hand. She's okay. Najat, after her.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this amazing panel, and thanks also for the introductory comments, all really inspiring and insightful, so off to a brilliant start. Thank you. I want to ask a question, Edib, about the comment you made about moments when perhaps Muslim businessmen, business people, see, for example, profit and loss sharing or other options and opt out because it comes at a personal cost to them, or potential personal cost. And thinking about this within the context of this panel, would you say that this is a structural obstacle in the sense that they don't have potentially other avenues that can be still fulfilling personally, or is it more of an ethical or moral question to them? And I'm really especially interested in the latter potential, or if it's something else, but I'm interested in the kind of ethical or moral perspective, which we will dig into in the next panel, of course. But are people somehow, or are business orientations more personally oriented about my own bottom line than perhaps they have been in the past? Or like, how do you account for this reluctance, perhaps, to do the right thing? I mean, of course, this is a tension rife in our world in general. Do you buy from Amazon knowing that the costs are higher for the environment, or whatever? So how do you make sense of that reluctance?
Well, I think, I mean, thank you for the question, but trying to think of what would happen, right? I'll try again to connect to something else. Prof. Abbas Mirahor, who was my professor, well known in Islamic finance, at one point when we have the Quran and economy subject, right? And he said the Muslims are the most selfish people in the world. Does that make sense? Of course, when you hear it, right, it doesn't really make sense, right? Muslims. It doesn't make sense from the Islamic point of view. But then he continued and explains, look, we as a Muslim, what do we want? We want to go to Jannah. And we don't want to go to the Jannah, just Jannah, we want to go to Jannat al-Firdaus, to the highest way. And that's why he's explaining we are more selfish. Now, this is moral, spiritual way of looking at it. Now, bringing from your question's point of view, at the end of the day, we are human beings, right? And all these businessmen, regardless they are Muslims or not, they are basically motivated by the profit. Because at the end of the day, if I don't have a profit, what's the point of me engaging this one? So, coming back to the example that I gave, as long as you have alternative, this is the problem. So there is no issue about, it's not just ethics, it's basically profitability issues. It's just, what is best for me. I'm looking for the best alternative. So why would I share the profit with you? Regardless if it is 30%, at the end of the day, if I'm making 20%, that 30% might be more than if I just go and make arrangement through the murabaha or something else, right? And let's ignore that part again. This is what I'm facing with the Muslims. If they have Islamic financing that says, okay, you borrow certain amount, you have to pay, let's say, 5% at the end of the day. Then you have conventional bank that is giving you the same financing and they are charging you 4.9, let's say. They would say, okay, what's the point? How is the Islamic bank like worse than? So what happens? Yes, we are Muslim, but many times we are simply just humans, right? We are looking, okay, what is the best price? In this region, generally, those who are in business, they know, people are just looking for the cheapest product. Maybe this one is ethically better. I was discussing last night with my colleague that I was traveling from Skopje, Addis. We are talking about Palestine cola that has been imported here. But it turns out that Palestine cola costs like 80 cents, while the normal cola is like 50 cents. So yes, we will boycott for some point of time, but at some point of time we'll say, okay, what's the point? What do I get in return? So I might not buy the Coke original, right? I will buy some other drinks, local drinks like gazosa, right? I need, okay, or something like. You get my point. So basically, at the end of the day, it's not just the moral, right? Very few people we have. I mean, there are some Muslims that are completely against Islamic banks. They don't buy that idea completely, so they don't want to have any kind of interaction about it. So it's not just about the moral at the end of the day, as long as we have alternative, as long as we have this dual comparison, unless we step forward and say, look, from today there will be no debt instrument, or debt instruments will be limited to certain amount or certain area, and this is how we need to interact. To have more stable economy, what was mentioned here, right, that, Haris mentioned this, if we had the Islamic sort of, we would have less of this cyclical or this, the movements and crises, because it will be more stable, because it's linked to the real economy that is followed. So we share in the risk, we share in the, tears and happiness and everything, but that's the bottom line, I would say.
Professor Fawad wants to add something.
Just can I add to that, please? I think, I'm on the side of the business owner. I think, why should business owner pay financial penalty, right? They are just the business owners. And I think, why do we expect them to pay financial penalty for the institutional failures? Because the failure of Islamic finance, in a sense. And I think there's an institutional logic of kind of looking at entrepreneurs, small and medium business owners, and thinking that they should take the hit. We could turn this around and say, what about in the past, Sharia scholars used to get paid by the banks, making financial products expensive. What about that? Is that not a bit of selfishness there, maybe? Right? So I think the products should not penalize people. They should be able to compete. They should be competent projects. And if they're not, then it's the problem of the product, not of the people. I think what we need is a moral economy for immoral people, and that will work.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Nedžad Gušić from Sarajevo. He used to be the member of the board of BBI Bank, the only Islamic bank, still Islamic, I hope, in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So he has the question or comment, please.
It's a statement and a question as well, not particularly to anybody, maybe to Khaleel and Professor Edib, but from the corporate finance standpoint, Bosnian economy being the economy in transition for many years, and the economy that shifted from the large companies and large conglomerates that we have to the SMEs, it's pretty simple. A business owner that has an SME company in Bosnia and Herzegovina, he has several obligations to pay. First one is the suppliers, right? So if we have any accounting or finance students, it's the cost of goods sold that you book in your income statement, so that's your first obligation as a company. Second set of obligations which you have is what we call SG&A, so salaries, general expenses, and administrative expenses, including workers, rents, electricity, utilities, and so on and so forth. After that, a company has to pay creditors, meaning banks, translated banks. And after that, on whatever is left, you have to pay taxes. So all of the 5 items are inevitable. You have to pay all of them. And lately in Bosnia, in the last 1 year, all of them have been increased. And all of them have been increased due to what we call material adverse change, or maybe it's better known as a material adverse effect, is something that has been imposed. It's not the market driven, it's been imposed. One day, the regulation is that electricity goes for SMEs up 40% from the next week. So there is not much you can do. You don't have time to do the transition, to do alternative sources, you have to pay. One day government says that the minimum wage will be increased by 35% or 40% without simultaneous decrease of the contributions for the minimum wage. So all of a sudden you have about 55 or 60% additional cost that you were not planning or budgeting. Same is with the banks. Whoever had contracted floating or variable rate on its financing in the bank just received a letter from the bank that due to the global movements or whatever, the rates are going up and that your monthly obligations are up. So owners, as owners, being mainly capitalists, they are not going to depress their margins. They're going to keep the same margins, and they can do it only if they increase prices. Now, this is the inflation effect that we have, and it's not stopping, and it's not holding on, and every month as new, let's say, new prices are coming on the cost side for the SME, the new prices are on the revenue side for the citizens, so we have the spiral effect, and we have a circle that we are like, you know, the dog that is chasing his own tail. This is what is happening. But the standard of living is going down, and the costs are going up. The question is, for anybody, of course, do you think that the government should intervene in terms of limiting the pricing and limiting certain margins on a certain products or all our products? Or should the banks readjust their risk appetites? The spendings in Bosnia and Herzegovina, almost 90% of citizens that are spending daily money, they're spending more than they earn. How can you spend more? How can you spend 2,000 if you earn 1,000? Because you reach for the debt, right? You take a general purpose loan, you have that money available on your account, you have a credit card, and you go around and you spend, every month you spend more than you have overdrafts or whatever. If the bank would be more conservative, if they would stop, let's say we are speaking about commercial lending, so if they would stop with the general purpose lending, and in that sense limit the spending of the people, would business owners decrease prices? What is the better option for the economy, for the real economy? I think, I speak about Bosnia, but I think it's the same in the region. Is it the intervention of the state, or is the changes of the risk appetites of the banks? Thank you.
Okay, so Professor Khaleel wants to answer, Professor
Okay.
Edib. And I would like also Professor BE쪼ROVIĆ, because in our country the government actually intervened when it comes to limiting the profit margins and the prices of some goods. Professor Edib.
No, absolutely. I think you can give a better context. I can just answer
It will be
it
the last question.
generally. I think that there's a continuous debate in economics as a discipline. Like most people agree government should intervene, but what's the extent of that intervention? My personal views is slightly different. I think SMEs is the backbone of every economy. Currently, the kind of global economy we live in. China is the biggest example why China is the China. And when SMEs take risk, they take risk on all of our behalf. When they earn money, we benefit in the economy as well. So I think they are the key players. If we put more regulation, we squeeze them. And that affects the economy in long term. Obviously, there will be situations where things will go badly, but you have to let them, because there will be companies which will be failing, there will be failures, but failures kind of like draw the way towards the success. You will have more entrepreneurial activities coming in, and I think majority of the time when I look at the economies of the Muslim country, again I'm generalizing a massively sweeping statement, but I think most of the time it's regulators' fault what the problem we are in currently in majority of the jurisdictions, because either they over-regulate or they think they can fix the problem without even understanding the problem. You can't fix prices, right? If you can't even have more financial regulation in London because the money will tomorrow travel to Paris or Tokyo very, very quickly. And I think we are developing countries, developing economy, we need to be lenient. There needs to be less regulation. It will hurt for a bit, but in long term, it will lead to prosperity.
I'll try to be quick addressing the questions, a couple of questions basically. When it comes to the government intervention, right, coming from Bosnia and from the region, my answer would be, don't let government do anything. Because what I realized that any policy that the government brought, basically it's worse. So we have like amendments to the law that basically amendments are worse than the law itself. So please don't do anything, just leave it, right? Second thing, when it comes to the second part, I'm still looking the answer, and I'm asking everyone that I'm coming across. I come to Bosnia every time, and I realize that, prices are, unbelievable. Then I'm asking myself, how do people live there, right? I left when I was above the average salary as a professor. I left Bosnia. You have the average salary that is, I don't know, maybe 1,000, they say 1,900, approximately 1,000 euro. But when you look at the prices in the market, I'm thinking, how do people manage to buy? But then I also realize that, whenever you go to the bingo or any of those markets, right, these are full. People are buying extremely. So this brings to the third question, the third part of the question that you say that the producers are increasing the prices. And this also links back to the, we can link everything. This is basically basic economic theory, supply and demand. If people are not in bingo or what is called this one nearby, Lidl, right? If they are not coming to Lidl, there would be no price increases, right? The producer would have to decrease the price. But obviously we are buying. How do we buy? Whether it is that, like you said, or something else, I have no idea. But something is really going, we are expanding. So this is where also Islamic finance could happen, but unfortunately we are trying to replicate because there is demand for the general expenses, like you said. So let's produce the product that will provide. So now we have, at some point of time, I remember the Sharia scholars were discussing about financing Hajj. In Malaysia, like they have financing for the Hajj. For God's sake, you are supposed to perform the Hajj without the debt. You are going to the Hajj and perform the Hajj and you will be indebted. What kind of Hajj is that? Doesn't make sense, right? But sometimes it's just, okay, let's create where there is demand for that. So if we stop going to the shops, I'm sure that it will go back, they will be reversed. But as long as there is demand, halas, it will be reflected in market.
What's happening in Serbia, Professor BEĆIROVIĆ?
I fully agree with my predecessors, and I think that I cannot answer the question without analyzing the market structure. As Najat said, we are transitional economies. I have 44 years. Of these 44 years, I think since '89, So we are 36 years in transition, so I don't know other times. How did our economies evolve from former Yugoslavia? To be honest, with all due respect, those major players, with all due respect to exceptions, many of the major companies did not grow because they were great entrepreneurs, because they were artists in the right time and were able to make money under strange circumstances. And so now they have the market position to change prices. When you look at the supply side, we look, for example, Serbia, which is a major agricultural producer. We've got two companies which are three companies, more than 20,000 hectares of land, which they bought very cheap. And so you control production, you control this, and you can now say, if our government said, we will limit the margins at a certain product, but I think it's same as Edib said, like our boycott of certain brands. It will take 1 month, people will be happy, and then we will return the prices, and we can increase it additionally, and it will be higher than before, and nothing will happen. And with banks we cannot say anything. As Fawad said, they will leave the country. With regard to food and all these goods which we need every day, there are monopolies which happened and which evolved especially during and as a result of the dissolution of former Yugoslavia. And I think the government cannot mess with them, and it's clear.
Okay, thank you very much. I would stop the panel here. If there are more questions, okay, of course, then after this we can go to the break.
Thank you so much. I have a story to share, just very small one. Actually, since I'm looking after corporate and commercial and I have a client, this client is one of the big depositors of our bank, but he doesn't utilize any credit. Actually, he is the producer of underwear, couple of types, but just underwears. I know it's not very, sympathetic, but this is real.
It's still Islamic.
Yes. And actually, he has wholesalers throughout Turkey, maybe 80 cities. We have 81 cities actually. 81 cities he has a wholesaler, and he just shared with us that in 1.5 years he did not increase the price at all. In Turkish economy, he did not increase the price at all. What kind of producer and seller of that guy? I think this is really related with the behavioral economy and some kind of solidarity. And because that guy sees that company is not just himself and his children or wife, whatever. He just considers that company with that 81 wholesalers, and together with their families, and together with their employees maybe. So what happened during that era? Even though he did not increase the underwear prices, cotton prices went down due to global cotton prices. And he has just producing, from cotton, is producing what? Yes, silk, and then from silk he is producing fabric, then he is producing underwear. So I mean, if he get that kind of advantages, he share it with their wholesalers. So what I'm going to make the point is generally we are just evaluating the Islamic finance from the institution's perspective, from the bank's perspective, or the government perspective. Actually, being Islamic is, in my opinion, it's very related with how the companies and how their owners behave and affect their economical, how to say, privileges. What kind of things they give importance, and for instance, you just minimize and balance your profitability, and you keep that community. This is exactly a community that you are going with that, and we just live with that. He's still happy. He's so wealthy, and he still have huge network with 81 wholesalers. Yeah.
Can I just add a small thing? I know we are late.
You're starting the fight between.
No, I just want to mention, I mean, the discussion is very interesting on the price control and those things, but it seems you're more looking at the goods market and how consumers are buying more and sellers increasing prices. But I think key problem in this equation is monetary policy. And the overall inflation in the economy goes up when you increase the money supply, debasing the money which you mentioned. And I think that is one of the key problems we have, other than, of course, the real economic problems. Like in Turkey, I think the inflation rate was 100%. I was talking 30%. And it is the result of monetary policy. So, yes, government has a role to play. The role is not to interfere in the goods market, definitely in the money market.
Thank you very much for all the comments. This is an excellent example, and I would like to have more details to share with our students as a case study, because it is really unique, bringing such level of ethics and morality to business operations. Thank you very much all. Just a short sentence. When Professor Edib mentioned that we are selfish and we want to achieve the highest levels of Jannah, just the word Edinburgh came to my mind. So if the Edinburgh is so beautiful as it looks from those pictures and videos, we can agree that we should organize the next conference in your cities. Posters. Okay, thank you very much. I would just like to share some certificates of appreciation with our keynote speakers as well and our leadership panel speakers, and to have a short group photo. Then we will go to break, as I think according to the schedule we are a bit late, but okay, just let's have a group photo.